The laughter was sharp, not joyful, not innocent, but targeted. James, 19, stood in the middle of the university cafeteria, holding his lunch tray like a shield. His sweatshirt was too big. His shoes were off-brand. His glasses fogged slightly from the heat of the kitchen behind him. He scanned the room. Tables full. Groups formed. People pretending not to notice him, until they did. "You can't sit here," said a tall student with bleached hair and a perfect jawline. That was Trevor. Track star. Sponsored. Smooth. A few others laughed. Some didn't. But no one said a word to stop it. James nodded, keeping his eyes down. Next table. This one's saved. Group project zone only. James finally spotted a single empty chair at the back, next to the garbage bins. He walked over. The moment he sat, a napkin floated down from above. It had a drawing on it, crude, unkind. James stared at it, then slowly crumpled it in his hand. Near the soda fountain, a man refilled his paper cup. He wore a black hoodie, jeans, a backpack slung over one shoulder. His beard was short, eyes observant. He watched as James unfolded his sandwich with trembling fingers, trying to eat without drawing more attention. The man didn't intervene. Not yet. But he saw everything. When James stood to leave, he tripped slightly. His tray clattered. Trevor laughed loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Need a map, bro?" More laughter. But the man in the hoodie didn't laugh. He set down his drink and slowly made his way toward the trash bins. Because not every hero enters with a speech. Some start by simply sitting down. And Keanu Reeves had just taken a seat. James didn't notice the man until he sat down across from him. No big entrance. No dramatic pause. Just the scrape of a chair. The weight of someone choosing this table, the one by the trash where no one ever sat. James looked up. The man offered a small nod, then unfolded his own sandwich from a simple brown paper bag. No tray. No pretense. No cafeteria badge. Just calm. Across the room, Trevor spotted it. His smirk twitched. He whispered something to his friends, eyes locked on James's table. One of them chuckled. Another turned their phone toward the scene, quietly filming. "Guess we've got a new fan club forming," Trevor muttered. Back at the table, Keanu took a bite of his sandwich. Then looked up at James. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, even though he already had. James blinked. "I mean, are you?" Keanu wiped his hands with a napkin and nodded once. "Yeah." Then he looked around the cafeteria. The buzz of whispers was growing now, students poking each other, heads turning, phones slowly rising. "You looked like you could use company," Keanu said simply. James swallowed hard. It's fine, I just..." Keanu leaned forward slightly, voice low. "You know the thing about people like them? They mistake volume for value. That's when it happened." Trevor stood. Loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yo, James. Didn't know you were tight with John Wick." Laughter rippled. Phones were up now, angles finding James and the man in the hoodie. Keanu turned slowly. Looked directly at Trevor. Didn't smile. Didn't blink. Then said calmly, "I think this spot's taken." The cafeteria went dead silent. Trevor froze. The grin slipped from his face. The laughter died halfway through someone's throat. Keanu turned back to James. Took another bite of his sandwich. And just like that, he'd flipped the entire energy of the room, without raising his voice once. James picked at the crust of his sandwich, trying to ignore the dozens of eyes still flicking in their direction. Keanu didn't stare. He didn't pressure. He just sat. Calm, collected, like sitting next to a lonely, humiliated kid in a cafeteria was the most normal thing in the world. Finally he spoke. "Why did you sit alone?" James hesitated. "I didn't mean to. There wasn't anywhere else." Keanu nodded as if that made perfect sense. "That ever happened before?" James laughed quietly, but there was no humor in it. Just years of practice disappointment. Every day since week 1. A girl from the journalism table tried to pretend she wasn't listening. The guys at the varsity booth went silent. Even Trevor, now back in his seat, watched out of the corner of his eye, his fake laugh tucked away for the moment. James exhaled slowly. I'm not like them. I don't do sports. I don't go to parties. I just try to keep my head down. Keanu tilted his head. How's that working out? James shrugged. I guess I don't get pushed around as much. Keanu looked at him, calm but serious. They're not pushing you physically. They're shrinking you. Same thing, just in a cleaner package. That line hung in the air like fog. James blinked. Then nodded. I never thought of it like that. Keanu took another bite of his sandwich. Maybe it's time they saw you for what you are, not what they say you are. James looked up, for the first time that day, with his shoulders pulled back just an inch straighter. And across the cafeteria, phones slowly started going back in pockets. Because what was unfolding wasn't viral. It was real. Keanu finished the last bite of his sandwich, wiped his hands, and slowly stood. The cafeteria wasn't loud anymore, just tense, charged, like a storm that hadn't broken yet. He didn't raise his voice, didn't ask for attention, but attention found him anyway. He took a few casual steps toward the middle of the room, then turned and looked across the tables, not angrily, not accusingly, just with clarity. Quick question, he said. Who decided James doesn't belong here? Silence. A few eyes darted to Trevor, who suddenly found a very compelling smudge on his tray. Seriously, Keanu continued. Was there a vote? A list? Did someone post a sign? A few chuckles. Nervous ones. But no one answered. Because deep down they all knew the truth. There had been no meeting. No rules. Just a habit. A cruel one. We all talk about kindness, Keanu said, still calm. But we laugh when someone's humiliated. We reward the loudest person in the room, not the kindest. Why? He looked directly at Trevor's table now. Because we're afraid if we don't join in, we'll be next. No one breathed. Even the security guard behind the snack bar leaned forward. Keanu let the words settle. Then gestured toward James, still seated quietly near the trash cans. That kid gets up every day and walks into this room knowing what's waiting. And still shows up. You think that makes him weak? He shook his head. That makes him stronger than all of us. A single student clapped. Then another. And then, slowly, the cafeteria erupted in applause. Not wild. Not forced. But real. And Trevor? He didn't laugh. Didn't clap. He just sat there, exposed. Because nothing reveals a coward faster than a room that finally wakes up. Keanu didn't linger. He didn't bask in the applause. Didn't give a speech. Didn't even wait for a thank you. He just walked back to James, nodded once, and grabbed his backpack. Take up space, man, he said softly. You don't need permission. Then he was gone. Out the cafeteria doors. No selfies. No spotlight. Just the same quiet man in a hoodie, disappearing like he was never there. But the room didn't reset. It shifted. Slowly. A few students near the back stood up and walked over to James. First one. Then two. Then four. Someone slid a chair next to him. Someone else offered a fist bump, awkward but sincere. A girl from the arts table leaned down and said, Hey, we've got space if you ever want to join. James didn't know what to say. He just blinked, stunned. Not at the kindness, but at how quickly things could change when someone dared to go first. At the far table, Trevor stayed seated, arms crossed, jaw tight. He tried to laugh it off, tried to regain control with a look, a shrug, a fake yawn. But no one was watching him anymore. And in his silence, he realized he hadn't just lost the room. He'd lost his grip on it. James, still holding his tray, finally stood up. This time, not because he was retreating, but because someone had made room for him. And now, he believed he could take it. Later that day, after his last class, James was stuffing books into his locker when he heard someone clear their throat behind him. Turned. It was Eli, a kid from his econ class. Clean hoodie, smart glasses, always sat second row. Never rude. Never helpful either. James tensed a little, unsure what was coming. But Eli just stood there awkwardly, shifting from foot to foot. Hey. I just wanted to say, that was wild today. In the cafeteria. James nodded slowly. Yeah. Eli rubbed the back of his neck. I saw it. Before. Like what they used to do to you. I saw it all semester. I should have said something. James didn't respond right away. Because this wasn't one of the usual apologies, the kind people give just to feel better. This was someone owning the silence. James finally asked, Why didn't you? Eli looked down. I guess I didn't want them to turn on me too. That landed. Not as an excuse, but as truth. James understood it more than he wanted to admit. But then Eli added something else. When that guy stood up today, I don't know. It made me feel like, maybe you don't need to be loud to be brave. James let the words sink in. You don't. You just need to stop pretending you don't see it. Eli nodded, this time without flinching. You eating here tomorrow? James smirked. You asking if I want company? Eli laughed nervously. I guess I am. James shrugged. Sure. Why not? As Eli walked away, James leaned back against the locker, arms folded. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was surviving the day. He felt like he was living in it. The next morning, James opened his student email during a quiet moment before class. One subject line stood out, wedged between homework reminders and club flyers. Private message, Keanu Reeves Foundation. His heart skipped. He clicked. Inside was a simple message. Hi James. You probably weren't expecting this, but someone from our team shared your name with us after a recent campus visit. Keanu occasionally visits universities to observe quietly. He doesn't always engage. But when he does, it's because he sees something worth seeing. He told us. This kid shows up. Despite everything. Give him a chance to show what else he can do. We'd like to offer you a spot in our mentorship and grant program for students who've been overlooked, underestimated, or simply forgotten by the usual systems. There's a reason he sat with you, James. Let's make sure the world knows why. The KRF team. James stared at the screen. Read it again. And again. He wasn't sure if it was real. But deep down, something told him. It wasn't just about the moment in the cafeteria. It was about the moments he endured before it. The quiet strength he never thought anyone saw. Now someone had. And that changed everything. That afternoon, James replied with trembling fingers. I'd be honored. Then closed his laptop. And for the first time, allowed himself to imagine a future that wasn't just about surviving, but belonging. By the end of the week, James's name was everywhere. The student paper ran a feature. From invisible to invincible, the day the cafeteria went quiet. Clubs started asking him to speak. Professors took notice. Even strangers nodded at him in the halls. Not because he shouted. Not because he posted. Because someone else saw him, and the world listened after. Trevor watched from a distance. His table in the cafeteria? Half full now. People still said hi. But their tone had changed. Polite. Measured. Wary. He wasn't feared anymore. Just avoided. And that somehow stung worse. One afternoon, he passed James in the quad. James was helping a freshman carry a poster board across the lawn. Trevor hesitated. Thought about saying something. Anything. But James didn't stop walking. Didn't flinch. Didn't even look angry. And that's what hit hardest. Not being hated, but being irrelevant. Later that night, Trevor stood alone in his dorm mirror, scrolling past a still frame from a video taken that day in the cafeteria. There he was. Leaning back, laugh. Eyes rolled. Mouth open wide. Frozen in time, not as a leader, but as a punchline. He closed the app and sat on the edge of his bed. Then did something rare. He didn't blame anyone else. He just sat in it. The student union was buzzing with noise, flyers, coffee steam, the scent of free pizza trying to bribe attendance at yet another leadership forum. Trevor walked in slow, eyes darting. He wasn't used to entering rooms like this without a crowd around him. But no one looked up. Except one person. He was seated near the front, notebook open, listening to the speaker at the podium. A leadership through adversity workshop. Not something Trevor ever imagined sitting through. But something pulled him in. Maybe guilt. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something quieter, like the ache of being left behind. Trevor slid into a seat near the back. 30 minutes passed. The session ended with applause, genuine, warm, and students began to shuffle out. James stood, collecting his things. Then looked up. Eyes met. For a moment, no one moved. Trevor approached slowly. "Hey." James nodded, calm. "Hey." Trevor shoved his hands in his hoodie pocket. "I didn't come here to explain myself." James raised an eyebrow. "That's good. Because I wasn't asking you to." Trevor looked away. Then back. "I just wanted you to know. I saw the article. The grant. The talks. All of it." The pause. "You deserved it." James looked at him, not smug, not distant. Just steady. "This could have gone a different way, you know." Trevor nodded. "I know." James continued. "I could have humiliated you. Posted videos. Turned people against you. But I didn't." Trevor looked up, surprised. "Why not?" James shrugged, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Because you already know what it feels like to be shut out. No reason to double it." Trevor blinked. That was it. No grand speech. No moral hammer. Just mercy. The kind that doesn't make noise, but echoes. James turned to leave, then paused. "If you ever want to show up like someone different, you can. No one's stopping you." Then he walked out. Trevor stood still, the weight of that offer settling on his shoulders like a coat he wasn't sure he deserved. But for the first time, he wanted to. The student auditorium was packed. Not for a concert. Not for a celebrity appearance. But for James. The kid who used to eat by the trash cans was now being introduced as a keynote speaker for the university's Voices of Resilience event, a campus-wide forum on leadership, empathy, and standing up when it's easier to stay quiet. He stood behind the mic. Not fearless, but ready. Up in the lighting booth, someone dimmed the house lights. The stage took on a soft amber glow. James began. "You probably don't remember the first time you ignored someone. But they do." The room went silent. Phones lowered. "I didn't get here because I wanted attention. I got here because one person paid attention when no one else did." He paused. He didn't yell. He didn't lecture. He just sat down. In the very back row of the auditorium, someone had slipped in late. Trevor. Put up. Quiet. Alone. No fanfare. He wasn't there to be seen. He was there to see. On stage, James continued. "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to fight back, but to hold your ground without becoming what hurt you." He scanned the crowd. And just for a flicker of a second, his eyes found Trevor. He didn't nod. Didn't call him out. He just saw him. And kept going. Later, when the applause came, loud, full, earned, James stepped off stage with his notes in hand. A few students gathered to shake his hand, thank him. Trevor stayed behind, waiting until the room had mostly cleared. Then, as James was packing up his bag, "You said the way forward doesn't come through revenge," Trevor said quietly. James looked up. Trevor's hood was down now. His voice didn't shake, but it was different. James nodded once. "I meant it." Trevor extended a hand. "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm just asking if I can walk forward too." James didn't hesitate. He shook his hand. "Then start walking." A week later, James received an email stamped with a silver emblem he didn't recognize. The subject line was simple. Private invitation, KRF Evening Roundtable. The body was even simpler. "You've been observed. You've been tested. You've risen. Now come sit with those who saw it coming." Below was an address in Malibu. No agenda. No dress code. Just coordinates. That Friday night, James arrived at a quiet cliffside villa. No paparazzi. No luxury cars. Just a small circle of people inside, diverse, focused, kind-eyed. He was greeted with warmth. Offered tea. Guided to a seat near the patio, where the ocean whispered below. And there, sitting at the edge of a low table, hoodie sleeves pushed up, sipping something from a ceramic mug, was Keanu Reeves. No entourage. No cameras. No press. Just him. James didn't rush. He walked slowly, uncertainly, like approaching a moment that had lived in the back of his mind since that day in the cafeteria. Keanu looked up. You made it. James gave a breathless laugh. I wasn't sure this was real. Keanu leaned back. It's as real as you were that day. They sat in silence for a moment. Comfortable. Then Keanu spoke quietly. Everyone remembers the speech. But I remember the sandwich. James tilted his head. The sandwich? Keanu nodded. You were just trying to eat. That's it. And somehow, that was enough to make them cruel. He looked out at the ocean. But you stayed. You sat there even after the napkin, the tray, the laughter. You stayed. James swallowed hard. Then said, Why me? Keanu looked at him, serious now. Because you didn't need an audience to have dignity. You had it before the room noticed. I just sat down so they'd finally see it. The pause. You didn't need saving. You needed space. James blinked, eyes glassy. No cameras. No stage. Just truth. And then Keanu added with a small smile. Most people wait for someone to stand up for them. You just needed someone to sit down. The cafeteria looked the same. Same trays clattering. Same half-wiped tables. Same hum of conversation rising and falling like waves. But for James, everything was different. He didn't walk in with a crowd. Didn't hold a mic. Didn't wear anything that said speaker or foundation member. Just jeans, a hoodie, and peace in his chest. He scanned the room. Not for attention. Not for applause. Just for that table. The one by the trash cans. Still there. Still awkward. Still ignored. He walked over and sat down. On purpose. People noticed. Some waved. Some nodded. No one laughed. A freshman passed with a tray, slowed down, then stopped. Hey, you mind if I sit here? James looked up. Not at all. The kid sat. 2 more followed. Then another. Within 10 minutes, the table was full. No one said why. They just knew. Across the cafeteria, Trevor sat with Eli, mid-conversation. He looked over and smiled, not with regret, not with jealousy, but with understanding. Rosa, the campus reporter, snapped a photo from afar. But she didn't post it. She just saved it. For herself. Because no one needed to tell the story again. The story was already living. In seats now filled. In spaces once empty. In a quiet table by the trash that had become a new kind of center. James took a bite of his sandwich. Someone passed him a napkin, clean this time. He leaned back and smiled. Not because he'd won anything, but because he stayed. And now, so did everyone else. Thanks for watching. What would you have done if you saw what Keanu saw? Speech balloons, share your answer in the comments. You never know who might read it and change because of you.